So as we bring him up to the stage, please help me welcome the founder and CEO of Leopard, Deepthi Srivastava. The co-founder of Descope, help me welcome Rishi Bhargava. The CPO of TinyFish, help me welcome Shuhao. And the founder of smallest.ai, please help me welcome Sudarshan Kamath. And as your moderator, please help me welcome the head of product at Atomicwork, Aparna Chugh.
All right, thank you so much for joining us here today, and welcome. And thank you to all of you for being such a huge part of our very first version of Fusion. I was listening to the conversation with Jeff, and I was like, that's going to be a hard, tough act to follow. He had a lot of good nuggets in there. But I'm also very excited for this panel because the four of you are fantastic builders, building for the AI era, in the AI era. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about your journeys. And I'm sure everyone is as well. So Deepti would love to get started with you and Leopard. My question to you is if you could just talk about Leopard a little bit and tell us maybe in a couple of examples, what are you seeing that's already providing measurable value? And how should technology leaders here think about adopting Leopard in their stack?
How much time do I have for this?
3 minutes.
Okay. So Leopard is meant to be simplifying the most complex pieces of getting your AI agents to be useful, which is connecting it to operational business data. So utilizing your structured, semi-structured operational data in real time in production for your AI agents, that's the purpose of Leopard, right? And why that, right? What is the problem? So if anybody's actually built an AI agent today that requires things like access to, not just access, but getting intelligence, information from your Postgres database, Snowflake, Salesforce, and other semi-structured data sources, what is it that you do today? We hear about text to SQL, we hear about MCP for PG, et cetera. But if you've actually done it, like the quality is actually fairly poor. Why is it poor? Because we're all builders, we love to build, so we can build an MCP server, but MCP is just HTTP, right? It's just a protocol. You actually have to build the thing behind it, the web server behind it, to use that analogy. And why are these things so poor in quality? Because they need the semantic intelligence about the institution, right? The institutional knowledge is missing from all of these things, right? The LLM doesn't have it either. Even if you fine tune, it doesn't have the latest information around your business and whether customer ID in Salesforce means user ID in Postgres, right? Just to give you one small example. Those things are extremely hard. They're very complicated. And so what you have to do is connect these two pieces to the semantic information. It needs to be connected with these, front-end MCP servers or whatever, in order for you to get real value out of your agent and your data. This is like the complexity that you have to deal with. Now imagine if you had to build that for 10, for 100, for 1,000 data sources, right? Each time you're doing this, the complexity has to be solved top to bottom, right? And on top of this, I haven't even talked about the governance piece that I think, Rishi might talk about, which is there's the who can access this data? When can they access this data, right? Like there's a whole set of things that needs to be done. Now you could do it one at a time, or there can be a way for you to just talk to one API that collapses that complexity and just allows you to, or your agent specifically, to really answer support questions or really do business workflows in real time, right? That's the purpose of Leopard. And in that is the sort of problem that I just talked about, which is it sounds cool to build each of these individual things, but after building the fifth one and trying to make it actually work, it's a lot of iteration and a lot of investment. Also, it's not one and done. You have to continue to invest in this. Talent is hard. Like, you have to continue to add information and data. Like, every time you have to maintain these individual things, which is extremely hard, right? So just the last part on that, which is the use cases, right? Like, I was talking to, I'll give you two examples. One is we're working with this partner that, they actually have ML. It's a fintech SaaS, so strict about data security and privacy, et cetera. They're a SaaS company, right? And they have ML engineers internally, but they still find this sort of real-time data access in order to answer your intelligence questions, like Jeff was talking about, right? The agents have the capability to be able to have context about your internal business. But just because they have a capability doesn't mean they have the context, right? Like, you have to provide that. And so we've built this for them, right? And they're using our system for like the internal intelligence. The other thing is I was talking to a CTO of a MarTech company that's fairly large, and they were saying that each time they build this agent, it takes them not weeks, but months to get it to a point where it can be externally facing, whether it's like for writing purposes or whether it's for like support purposes. It takes a long time to be able to answer simple questions like, where is my order? Or what is going on with this particular piece that I submitted, right? Application that I submitted.
No, I think you make a great point, Deepti. You're talking to a room full of technology leaders, and the tendency is always to first try and build, right? And the point you're making is, hey, it's continued investment. It's a lot of work, and let's not underestimate what goes into it. Shuhao, I would love to chat with you next about TinyFish. Despite the name, you have a very big brief, right? Building web agents at internet scale sounds boundless to me as a problem statement. How do you bound it? What use cases are you solving?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think we have seen a lot of browser agents that didn't work. Like in demos, you can see agents booking hotels, booking flights. And the keyword is really boundary, like what is really ready for enterprise scale today. And we're talking about enterprise operations. You want to put into cloud, virtualize, work 24/7 at millions of times a day, and the level of reliability, consistency, and efficiency. But that is what's delivering value to enterprise today, but what are the options that you can trust, right? So our philosophy is really to look at the SOTA technology today and what is the percentage, what kind of operations that we can trust the AI to automate? And then we scale that at enterprise level. And we deploy that with our customers. One example, if you search a hotel stay in Japan, and you probably will see the results coming from TinyFish agent because almost half of the hotels in Japan, they're not connected to any systems. There's no API, there's no aggregator. So the only way to get accurate real-time room price is to actually simulate a booking, go through all the process. That's an agent working with the browser. And we support thousands of hotels, different websites, and at a scale of hundreds of millions a month. So when we see demos of AI booking hotel flight, our solution is actually working behind the scene for Google for that at that scale.
Thank you, and congratulations on a fantastic launch recently. Sudarshan, tell me about smallest.ai and what enterprise workflows are you solving? Where are you seeing voice beat chat?
Yeah, so smallest AI, we build enterprise voice agents. What differentiates us from other companies is that we also own the entire model stack. So today, voice agents are generally having multiple foundation models that enable them to work in real time. But generally what happens is you have seen a lot of POCs or demos, but then when it actually goes to a publicly listed enterprise solving a very critical use case like customer support, you cannot have it hallucinate or break or things like that. And so with us, you actually have the ability to have like complete control on the quality, latency, and all of the important aspects of it, because we own everything from the speech to text, the TTS, the SLM layers of it, and we actually train it on the enterprise context. some of the most critical use cases that we solve are generally financial enterprises automating their contact centers for customer support. But we also work with sort of any first voice AI use case. So any sort of a call center where a human's job is basically to sit all day and take calls or like make outbound calls. We handle that with AI. So we also do things like pre-sales. For example, we are supporting credit cards, we are supporting mortgages, we are supporting like a bunch of other financial instruments with any sort of a phone number or anything that they have. Our AI agent powers it. So yeah, that's basically what we
Pretty
do.
fantastic. That's a lot more variety than I thought. Thought it'd be customer support, but it goes beyond. Rishi, for you, we're seeing a lot of AI agents being deployed in the enterprise. We probably, to a few companies here, added 3 more now. But as CIOs and technology leaders evaluate these, and a lot of it is currently in experimentation stage. Some of it is going into production. What is it that they should worry about in terms of security, monitoring? What is it that they should not worry about?
So I think, first of all, Descope is a customer identity access management provider, started 3.5 years ago. Some of the larger customers, Databricks, GoFundMe, Navan, U-Haul, many others. The big thing, if I look at the last 1 year, which as we saw in Vijay's presentation, this is the year of agents, right? Everybody started to talk about what can we do in agents. We've had many, like over the last 2 months, I've had 20 plus conversations with large Fortune 200, Fortune 500 companies around agentic deployments. And what I am seeing as a common pattern is everybody is in that experimentation phase of what use cases will be valuable, but very hesitant to figure out which one to put in production first. And the common theme that's emerging across the board as they evaluate this is the old boring problem. I think this has been the problem from the first time cloud came around, the first time client server, which is what guardrails to put, what controls to put, what monitoring to put, and how do we make sure things just don't go crazy when it puts into production. Now, one thing unique that I feel is different from all the eras when it moved to cloud or other technology advancements happened is this time we are dealing with something probabilistic rather than deterministic, right? With all the amazing algorithms and all the new models, the reliability when you ask an agent to perform a certain task, it's getting better. It's gonna 80% chance that it's gonna do exactly what you want it to do. But that 20% when it tries to do stuff outside of what you asked it to do, you want to be ready for that. You want to govern that. You want to control that. But then there is another concern, which is even when it's doing that 80%, the question is, how is it doing? So a very good example, recently I was talking, I will not name names, large CTO and CIO, 2 people sitting in a conversation with me. It's like, okay, you give it a task, says, go update my CRM to do this particular action. Now, update to a human always means go find the deal and go update it. Now, an agent can update by cloning, deleting the original one and updating the new one. That's an update. Perfectly fine. Accomplish the task. But what it did in the meantime is change the ID, broke a whole bunch of workflows which were outside of the context of that CRM. And this is a simple example, but think about the controls, lack of monitoring that can have side effects impact. I think we don't realize the knowledge that humans have built over years of training versus an action taken by an agent. So anyways, to answer your question very precisely, Aparna, what I'm hearing is a lot of focus from the CIOs and CTOs and CISOs on making sure they deploy this in the right structure, they put the right guardrails, putting the right access control, putting monitoring, putting security, what data goes out, what data doesn't go out, do they allow only Microsoft Copilot, do they allow ChatGPT and Copilot in their organization? And there is this whole shadow AI thing emerging, right? The shadow IT that we saw in the cloud world is happening all over again. What stops from somebody from bringing in their Claude and running an agent there? So those are some of the concerns that we're hearing.
Thanks, Rishi. You spoke about the one thing that's majorly different from, and you've spent like your entire career building security products. It's more probabilistic than before, right? When it was more deterministic. How's that made you think very differently about the products you're building? And what different approach are you taking?
Yeah, so I think in general, again, for people who have followed security, there's this word always used for the last at least 7-8 years, more common, zero trust, right? I think that word zero trust means that even for humans, you give only the privileges they really require. I think that we need to take it to a different level. I think we need to take it, not only give the privilege to the agent that they only require, but give the privilege to the agent that they only require for that task, right? So can we build a model where you deploy the agent can be a fully autonomous or on behalf of a user, but when they do the task, they ask for the right set of permissions, right set of access control. That access control is either given by the user who gave the task or the security team, depending on the organization, depending on the risk model. But even start with that constrained model. A good analogy, and I did this as a LinkedIn post about a few months ago, is I look at our fully autonomous cars today. And today, like after a long time, I drove into SF in my own Tesla rather than taking an Uber because Uber makes me sick, sitting in the back. And I drove self-driving 80% of the time. After a long time, I do not do self-driving. And today is one of those days, not making up the story. But the point is, 10 years ago, self-driving came around, it was very hesitant. We says, okay, just do auto cruise control. Then the distance. Then the steering came around. You always had to hold it. You need to have your eyes on it. And slowly, the humans guided this system to be autonomous. And I think that's what I believe we should all be thinking, is like, how do we build this ramp up? Of course, a faster ramp to deploy and build the right guardrails.
Yeah. And Deepti, you've also spent many years at Google and worked with a huge scale of data, right? What problems did you see that attracted you to build what you're building now? Why did you think it was harder for AI agents to access data? What were you seeing?
Yeah, I think I want to pull off of where Rishi left off, actually, this probabilistic thing. So, yeah, I mean, I've built basically deep data infrastructure products my entire career, right? Like as an engineer, we're all engineers. And then as a product leader, from, inside Google, Oracle's kernel, which is like what I used to like write code for, is like the rack database for Oracle, to sort of, being like the founding product person for Spanner. Shout out to Sneha. And all of that time, right? Like we build these beautiful data infrastructure things, but the reality of life is that no one has just one data infrastructure piece. Data silos are a fact of life, right? So no matter how beautiful, how scalable, how exactly like precise your data system is, how much governance it has, like all that stuff, right? Doesn't matter, because some part of your business is going to have Postgres, some other part is going to have Snowflake, some other part is going to have some other like MySQL that's running on some box somewhere. And so that is a hard problem. And in the world, by itself, just having data silos is a hard problem. Governance of those data problems is a hard problem. Making real-time decisions and getting the right data at the right time to make those real-time decisions, right? Like go update my sales data, right? Like you actually need to know what's happened in that sales pipeline to understand what to update. Now, if you're operating on dumped data, which is what we talk about with RAG, or if you have like a data lake, house, ocean, continent thing, like you're basically saying dump all your data in one place and then use that. But anybody who's built a data pipeline, it's complex and it's stale. And it has lost context because you've transformed it. right? So if you've lost semantic context, this like tribal knowledge that human beings have built over time, if you've lost the real timeness of it, if you've lost like the ability to, you have lost the ability to make real time decisions, right? Number one. And number two, in the world of a probabilistic system, right, a probabilistic stack, how are you going to make those decisions, right? So Rishi and everybody else, like you're building agents, right? And we're talking about planet scale agents, and then we're going to put governance on the planet scale agents, but it goes and accesses your sales data. Who's governing that it's getting the right data, right? And that the service context you've created in the agent to govern the agent is being passed into that data, right? And now you have to do that each time you're talking to a different data silo. Like I was talking to a startup actually, and they said, we already have 10 data silos because your marketing data, your sales data, your product data, your usage data, your metrics around all of those things, your internal productivity are all in different places. So in order to do this update, that is a simple thing, go and update. Who's allowed to go and update? Like, how are we going to go update, right? Those are the hard problems. And when I started Snow Leopard, it was like, I knew that in a probabilistic world, even if it does what you wanted to do, it being like the LLMs or foundational models, 80% of the time, which is, I think, high, like, let's say 60 to 80, even if it's doing it those many times, if you can't trust it all the way, then you really have to have a human in the loop, which means somebody's always like looking over it, which means you're not actually getting the productivity gain in your team that you're expecting, right? So these are the things that really ultimately I was like, in a world that's non-deterministic and you want to make deterministic decisions, you have to make that connection between the non-determinism of this agent and the deterministic pieces that you need to make decisions, right?
Data.
Yeah, which is the data.
Yeah. Thank you. Sudarshan, I have a two-part question for you. As you're deploying these voice agents in the enterprise, what are the biggest challenges you're seeing that are showstoppers still today, whether it's cost or accuracy, latency? And the second part of my question is, in which aspect do you think there's going to be the most acceleration in the next 6 months?
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge generally is getting to understand the enterprise workflows and actually expectation management in the beginning of the technology adoption. So voice is like very new, and just AI agents as well, right? Like a year ago, this technology was not at a place where it could be deployed to production. Now, going into an enterprise, their data is usually not ready in a place that it can be accessed by the AI agent. Their telephony systems are not, connected well. They don't have, the capacity to monitor these agents, and they don't have the process set up to do that. So it's not just purchasing a SaaS software, it's fundamentally changing how a business process operates. And so there is like a huge, especially as you go to larger enterprises, there is this whole sort of top-down approach that we need to take to help everyone understand what the change management actually looks like. So what started off as, hey, we are just a SaaS platform, why don't you use it, ends up becoming like a whole thing in itself. So the enterprises that have had success in adopting voice technology understands that this is not like a quick, 1 week I'm going to test it and yeah, it's just going to work. But like, it's like a, we are dating basically. So we kind of try it out, and if things work out, like then both the teams then get married, and then you're kind of working together. So you have to have like a pretty good dating period in the beginning, where we have a forward deployed engineering team that works very closely with the enterprise. We send like people to understand, the systems that the enterprise has, and we kind of build things, integrations, etc., for them, so that the agent can perform the way it can perform. The bottleneck in terms of the parameters you talked about, particularly cost or latency, does not exist generally, at least not in the United States. Cost is definitely a barrier in countries like India, where it's prohibitive. Like if you're paying like 10 or 20 cents a minute, that's pretty prohibitive. But in the United States, I think you have a very high ROI at this current cost. But yes, in terms of quality, I think we have still not passed what we call the Turing test, which is basically the AI just being human, right? Like you can still tell it's AI. And that's the most difficult part because voice is so human, like voice is so natural and what makes us human beings. And the reason a human voice is different from an AI voice is because it's actually imperfect. And a lot of effort is going to make these AI voices imperfect. You know, like
Yeah.
it's actually pretty good,
Yeah.
but that's not what we want. So I think over the next, a year or two, we're going to have extremely imperfect voices and hopefully.
Absolutely right. You're right. And those are some great points. I think one, you're saying that it's not necessarily about the technology itself, which is actually doing better, but it's the context and the tooling around that sometimes need to align with voice technology. I chat with ChatGPT with voice a lot, especially while I'm driving, and it recently laughed at me, which was a first, right? So I totally understand what you mean about imperfections, those right pauses and those intonations. Getting those right is harder. So in your opinion, that is where it needs to be better significantly.
Yeah, that, and then there is obviously the whole, as the intelligence gets smarter, the agent can do much more. But I think these are like the two major aspects we are playing.
Shuhao, similar question, but you work with a lot of large enterprises, right? Google, ClassPass, I think. So I'm sure they care even more about trust and explainability in the product, right? How do you cater to that within your product? How do you solve for it?
Yeah, so first of all, it's a secular trend that enterprises are looking for the transition to more agentic operations. And if you think of where the capital flows to, where the operations flows to, they flow to the most efficient system. And the reason for the past couple of decades that we're all here doing software, that's because that's software that's the most efficient system. No matter if you're an enterprise that hundreds of years old, you want to migrate to operation to software. And the agent is just the beginning. So what we're seeing from our customers, they're actually very forward-thinking. So Google, ClassPass, they are the technology companies themselves, but they're also companies from insurance sectors. They're actually more eager because the cost of being left behind is not something that they can afford. And in terms of that, and we navigate our customers to the use cases, to the value that if the agent screw up, they're okay. Their company will still be there. But if the agent is doing an amazing job, we're talking about their high-value top-line impact. So that's our strategy, to start with the conversations. Hey, how can we help you to even think of at the leadership level, at the executive level, how do we help your business? And this is also being lucky in the first group of agent builders, like all of us. As a startup at our stage, you get to talk to the top leadership of Fortune 215 companies because they're looking for solutions and startups who are really cutting edge, right? They're not having the solutions with traditional companies, and they will be very supportive, putting resources to work with us, and you always will figure out the type of operations that can be migrated to agent system today with them. It's a matter of how we can quickly serve the customers and deploy solutions for them.
Fantastic. I have one more question. I'm just going to toss it out there. But the question is for this audience, as they're experimenting more, evaluating a lot of AI agents, what advice would you want to leave them with? Like one do and one don't?
I can share from my learnings. I think one thing I'll say is find the use case which is high impact and could be implemented faster, right? I don't want to use low risk because there's going to be risk. If it is high impact, the risk is higher too. But I think speed is more important here because, again, I truly believe in the compounding law that everybody talks about, which is you got to learn fast, you got to move fast. I'm seeing some organizations with millions of, this is like B2C organizations, millions of users trying to put out public MCP servers for all of their APIs, and they are moving at fast speeds. And they are finding out the issues in the attempt to do that. But get on it. I think most of the projects that I am seeing are sanctioned top-down. People have built these small teams. People call it Project Warp Speed, Project whatever, Project Leopard. But the point is...
Leopard?
Leopard. But I think the point is pick up a use case, experiment, move fast. That's the best way to learn. I think we can all read enough online, but the best way to really learn is to go experiment. All use cases will be nuanced. I think AI is one of those things which is, it's an infrastructure, its abilities, its capabilities, but the real use case may be very, very particular to your organization. So that's what my recommendation.
Actually, I want to add to that. I fully agree. I think you really want to look for agent solutions that can turn around in less than a week. If not, it's something else. It's pretending to be agent solutions. And you can always find in your system a sandbox environment. You don't have to worry about security. You always can find a system, an environment for your vendors to test, to play with. And also the use cases where you have existing evaluation system for. So you don't have to invest too much to evaluate the performance, and which means you are ready to migrate if they prove the value. So speed is definitely one of the criteria.
Yeah, just to add to that, like the way we also suggest, like any new enterprise that comes to us is like we find this quick win together, and that quick win is often a very simple use case with the highest ROI that we can get. But the moment we have that quick win, I think then we invest a lot in kind of sending forward deployed engineers or like, teammates who actually go in and understand more use cases and understand the organization from within and what all we can change. So acting as a consultant before we actually deploy software. But I think that quick win is really important, and that kind of builds trust, and that allows you to, do more ambitious things later.
Yeah, I agree with everything, but I think this shows the POC to production journey, right? Because we have the 80-20 rule happening here. So I agree with Shuhao that like follow the dollar, and the dollar is all going to AI. So that makes sense, right? So then you'll work with people. Like we get to work with lots of really, movers and shakers off the industry in a way because they're all forward leaning. But there is a large adoption curve, like Sudarshan was saying. So POCs are easy, production is hard, there's an 80-20 rule happening, right? And there's also a lot of hype, like build your own MCP server, build your own this, buy that. Like my advice to everybody here would be like similar, but identify a use case that is really important, but not going to be make or break for your company in most cases, right? And then double down on that, and then see where you can buy, as in partner with other companies to take advantage of what they're doing, right? And where you actually need to build. Because if you try to build everything in-house all the time, the iteration loop is much longer, right? So it takes a week to put a POC together, let's say. I'm going to like put money that it takes months to get it to production, and then 90% of the time it doesn't make it through because there's some corner case somewhere. Because the people who are making these decisions to put it in production do not want to take the risk, right? And so we're working in a deterministic world, but with an inherently non-deterministic probabilistic situation in the stack. I don't think the stack is different to be counter culture. I don't think there's a new AI stack. AI is a tool, like Jeff said. You just have to figure out where it fits in your stack. So everything doesn't become AI. I think that's my main thing, right? Like everything is not AI. Everything doesn't need to be AI. Now, if you need to say AI to get money, cool. But right, like it doesn't need to be something you adopt, like, right? Like into every single use case, number one. Number two, figure out very quickly where you can get startups to be your forward deployed engineering team, right? And where you really need your resources, like your people, to be able to build it. And then figure out what are the pieces where you need to build trust with the system, where you need to build trust with the end use case and the sort of stakeholders for that, and try and push one into production, right? and like put a time bound on it, because once you put something in production, you'll know all the pieces that you need to figure out for yourself, and then you can have a repeatable process. Because without that repeatable process, everybody building everything in AI all the time, and one person's using Sonnet 3.5, the other one's using Sonnet 4, the other one's using 4.1, like, how do you standardize on this? I don't know, right? Like, I've been in enterprise my entire life, like, I don't know how to sell this, like, variability to people, right? To people like you, frankly. So I have to get a place for my thing, but in general, right? Like, I need to get to a place where I can deterministically say, yes, it can do this, and no, it can't do this, right? So that you can sort of upsell that to the people who are making the decision, right? Everything doesn't need to be AI all the time, but also, like, we need to put something in production.
Thank you. I want to open it up to the audience if there's any questions for our panelists.
Startup or the software development is now AI first or AI developer, and where do you see this arc headed? And the thing that I would want to bring out is, what the point that Sudarshan pointed out, for all the other use cases like voice, imperfection is the core feature. But when you look at the software developer, the perfection is the aim. So in other words, we all can strive for a common standard. The reason why there was no entropy is organizations don't have the same level of the perfect engineers. So is it the perfect use case where AI can literally homogenize and standardize and take over that one use case?
I would say, like, the idea of AI is not to homogenize. The idea of AI is to, in an ad hoc world, be able to make progress, ultimately, right? That's why it's non-deterministic, and that's why non-determinism is a feature, not a bug, for the most case. It's just about how do we adapt the rest of the stack to accommodate that non-determinism in order to make it predictable. That's what Leopard's entire mission is in some way, right? To help you make deterministic decisions in the world of non-determinism. So that's one thing. I think if your question is like, how do we deal with the fact that there are like imperfections in AI versus how do AI, like, do people have AI developers, right? Then the rest of it becomes like, what is your tolerance for the risk today versus later, right? Because you can isolate a use case. Like, my whole point is you can isolate a use case and then see if you can get that sort of productivity gain in that use case or apply AI to that use case. But I don't think you can take one thing and, in the same way as you did in the past, stamp it out to everything else. I think you have to have the basics of the concepts for what you learn become homogenized, and you can apply them. But you cannot have one use case that then tells you how to, like in coding, like one use case that then like can be used across the board in how you build other AI use cases.
So I think if I understand your question was more precisely on developers. What are we using? How are we using the AI coding assistants, and how far do we rely? And the imperfections.
Like a 60% AI generated, 90%.
I think we are way behind the curve at Descope on this, and that is on purpose. Again, Descope being an infrastructure layer and identity layer, an imperfection or a bug is a very high cost. Like, security risks associated is very, very, very high. So we are very behind on this on purpose, but still every developer has access to Copilot. There are no code reviews that pass through just with an AI review. If there is stuff done with Copilot, we know that. We review that even more thoroughly. Not to say there is no productivity gains. Of course, if like a good Copilot, whether it's Cursor, GitHub, whatever, you start to say, give it the function name, 80% of the time it does a good job to generate the whole function without even prompting. So we are starting to get the benefits, but we are not at a stage where you can prompt and develop a full thing, with the exception of example applications and POCs. I recently did for a large airline. It's like they had a use case, hey, backseat entertainment, do this, scan this. We have our SDKs. those are very friendly. So if you as organizations wants to use the identity SDKs to build apps, that use case, I have built sample apps, given it to customers, POCs. That example is fine. Infrastructure software that we are developing, very little. That's my answer.
I think this can be an entire, very quickly, it can be a whole separate discussion. I see 5 minutes left. I think next year, the question will be, what is the AI engineer in your company, what level they are at? This year, we're still asking the percentage of the code, but I think next year, it's going to be how senior your AI engineers are. So I think that's the trend.
Just to sort of quickly close it out, I feel like the best engineers have become like even better with AI, and the bad ones are just, I mean, the other engineers are now spending time fixing their vibe coded things, right? So there is this whole concept of vibe coded cleanup specialist that has come up as a job description. But our code is, by the way, 80% or 90% AI generated. But having said that, the senior developer spends a lot of time architecting and cleaning things up. And then there is AI that actually reviews the AI generated code. So there is this whole tool that does that. And yeah.
Good spectrum here.
Yeah, I'm the same as Rishi. We're doing infrastructure, so we don't allow, like the whole point is determinism at the top, so we can't have determinism at the bottom.
Sorry, was there another question here?
I was just going to add a shameless plug. So, hello, I'm Sneha. I'm a software developer at Google and Amazon before this, very much on Deepti's team that she called out. Being a developer for 2 decades now, I see the shift that these guys are talking about, where AI needs to start building AI. So your POCs, your MVPs, your PMF should happen, built with AI. That cost has gone significantly lower. And when you get to the level of building infrastructure, you want to make your senior architects more powerful, not boil them down with meetings and documents and then reviews with stakeholders. Let them show you an MVP that talks much louder than words. Thank you. Thank you.
This is for Rishi. I think Rishi you said that the boring part is about putting the guardrails for deploying any kind of AI stuff, right? Agents and things. I think probably people keep talking about context engineering, maybe this guardrail engineering or something has to come in. Can you go a little bit deeper on that front, which is when you say guardrails, I think this cannot be standardized, right? This is guardrail per company or per use case which needs to go in, right? And so does it mean that for every deployment in an enterprise, this part is going to become like you get the context, that is also enterprise specific, your guardrails is also going to become enterprise specific? And what is who's going to monitor that stuff? Because these guardrails can be I don't know, pages and pages of context or whatever it is.
So yes, I think, again, the guardrails word is a generic word in my opinion, right? The best way to think about this to not really get you scared or boil the ocean, and it's not that hard, but I think it's important to think about this first, is you had software that was developed before AI, very probabilistic. What controls did it have? It did still have permissions. It still had data leak prevention. It still had database access control rules. It still had what server does it run on. It still had production, staging, all of the controls there. So there are already controls in your organizations that you have had. The question to ask is, how do those controls morph into the new world? Right? That's it. If you ask that question, then I think you'll be very quickly be able to say, well, certain controls like production, staging stuff does not change. I have the controls, work fine. Access controls, they change a little bit because I want it restricted. How do they change? What do you need to deploy? How do you do that? Data, well, now suddenly the data is starting to go out. We talked about whether it's being used to train AI or not. Should we put in another layer of data filtering? Which LLMs can it go to? Do we need to deploy locally? So I think it's not again, security world, I've always says you just have been talking the same thing for 25 years. It's the basics, the hygiene stuff. But what I'm pointing out is think of it once more because the landscape changed from very deterministic to very probabilistic, and that will give you the answer. So I think, yes, it'll be different for each organization, but the controls are common across. What is the tolerance and what exactly is the control is different organization, but pretty much is the same thing. Access control, data leak prevention, execution control, same, what we have been talking.
I have a quick rapid fire to end. So you have to be, maybe Deepti will start with you. You have to be fast and you have to be fiery.
I'll be fast.
Right. What's the worst thing you shipped that made money?
I don't know. Everything can be more perfect. So I think everything.
Wow.
I was also at Google for a long time. And so, yeah.
Everything makes money.
Change the button color and it still makes whatever money. So, yeah.
Same question, Rishi.
I shipped a virtualization software while I was at McAfee, made boatloads of money. Don't underestimate the distribution of large companies.
What was the question? What was
What's the worst thing you shipped that made money?
back in when I was an intern, like messed up some voice recognition IVR system, and all the 611 goes to AT&T broke. Yeah, that was.
This is not with Smallest, but like one of my first sort of startups, like we just built a landing page. It just had a pay now button and people used to go and pay.
Amazing. Let's try that once more.
That's a marketing skill.
Agents.
Yeah. All right. Next question for you, Sudarshan. Have you ever renamed a feature to make it sound more AI?
Yes. We had this noise cancellation thing that we had shipped, and so I mean it's a very simple algorithm. It doesn't use any AI, but yeah, it has a whole smart AI based noise cancellation. So yeah, that helped sell the product for sure. Yeah.
Cool. Shuhao? Question: have you ever renamed a feature to make it sound more AI than it was?
Yeah, we were our first product called WebQL before in the beginning, and we renamed it AgentQL.
I'll be surprised if any product manager founder did not do it. So yes, did it, and in fact, I did it successfully to lead ahead of a competition. Previous company, Demisto Security Orchestration, we launched a feature called Canvas, which was an investigative tool. We called it AI. Back then, it was machine learning AI. Same again, but renamed it. It automatically used to create certain connections. People went crazy on that. So yes.
So my company name is Leopard, but everybody called it Leopard AI because otherwise it becomes Apple's OS X was also called Leopard. Like, are you doing environmental stuff? Do you care about animals? So it's Leopard AI. Okay, we do AI.
So it's in the name for you. Okay. What is the biggest lie vendors tell CIOs?
What is the biggest lie vendors tell CIOs?
What is the biggest lie
I know.
vendors tell
We
CIOs?
built it already.
Yeah.
Or it's coming next week?
Yeah.
No, we've built it already.
Built it already. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have beautiful presentations with, every single thing detailed out, but there's nothing behind it. So, but yeah, it helps. I mean, people invest in the future, so.
It's like your fake landing page. Yeah.
I'll give a different one. My software is easy to deploy.
All right, now that we are all informed, thank you so much for all the wonderful insights. Thank you, everyone.
Sure.